So for the last couple of years, I've had the desire to make a trilogy video, specifically one that would be motivated by the third movie being a new release. And during the last couple of months, when I was writing about the First Avenger and the Winter Soldier, I had the epiphany that Captain America was my answer. Per a creative choice, the First Avenger and the Winter Soldier are spoiler reviews, but Civil War has no spoilers. Now, in the description below, you will find a chapter list telling you where every review is. So you can be weird and watch 3 first and then backtrack, or you can watch 2 then 1 then 3, or 2 then 3 then 1, or 1 then 3 then 2. Whatever floats your boat, the choice is yours. Either way, we're going on a journey, and it's going to be a very special one too. Cue the intro. Captain America, the First Avenger. Speaking as a fan slash lover slash obsessor of the superhero genre, I like it. The story follows wannabe soldier Steve Rogers. After faking his papers time and time again, he is discovered by Dr. Abraham Erskine. Upon speaking with Rogers, he gives him the stamp of approval. Once in the military, it is clear that physically he doesn't fit in, but after being injected with a super soldier serum, he becomes a new man. He serves his country first on stage, then on the battlefield. The enemy is Hydra, and their leader is Red Skull. Fit with a pretty awesome suit and a shiny shield, Rogers takes his Brooklyn attitude and takes on Red Skull, with no plans to back down. Chris Evans was cast officially as Captain America in April of 2010. The First Avenger came on the scene in 2011. Up to that point, Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, and Thor had been unleashed. Fans were prepping for The Avengers, a movie that could not afford to be any less than game-changing. But before a frame of that game-changer could be captured, Marvel had to establish the First Avenger. And for me, the movie serves as a soft reminder of why the superhero genre is my favorite. Our main character has a personal want to fight for his country. He is not doing it for the ladies or the medals. He is doing it because it's his calling. He is miserable not being on the battlefield. When he finally gets to be on the battlefield, he is on a rogue mission to save his best friend, Bucky Barnes, and his platoon. He's been told quite curtly to not go, but he makes a personal choice to be the guy he wants to be. Not a hero, but a good man. And when he comes back from the mission, victorious, he earns the admiration of his boss. And that character beat draws us into some pretty solid directing. The director doing that directing is Joe Johnston, one of the less talked about Marvel filmmakers. He fits into that category of movie directors that we have all subconsciously titled, "Oh no, trust me, you've seen his movies. You just weren't aware that you were watching them." But you know what? Don't even worry about it. Time breeds knowledge. I am here to bridge the gap. Johnston's feature debut was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He followed that with The Rocketeer, and then, years later, the 2010 remake of The Wolfman. Now, those movies may not have spoken to a lot of people, but they spoke to Marvel. They show he's had experience with action, effects, and characters that undergo a physical transformation, so regardless of previous reception, it was a match made in Marvel. Another match made in Marvel was Chris Evans. Finding him was a remarkable milestone. They had the smartass billionaire and the noble alien, and now they had the leader. Before Captain America, Evans was known for playing Johnny Storm in Fantastic Four. He was not the leader, but he sure wanted to be. Before the superhero genre came knocking, he got roles in Not Another Teen Movie, The Perfect Score, and Cellular. All 3 of those projects showcased a confident personality that, given the right material, would catapult Evans into the role of leader. In The First Avenger, Evans becomes that leader, and when the story reaches that character arc, it becomes clear the movie has 2 objectives: introduce the character and prove that he can lead a team of extraordinary outcasts. In the long run, the First Avenger not only benefited from impeccable casting, but also bringing in invaluable craftsmen to create the story visually, like director of photography Shelley Johnson, production designer Rick Heinrichs, and costume designer Anna B. Shepard. Lining up the unforgettable supporting cast, we have the honorable and charming Dominic Cooper, the compassionate and wise Stanley Tucci, the beautiful and concealed Haley Atwell, and the scene-stealing Tommy Lee Jones. My favorite scene out of the whole movie comes right after Peggy witnesses Steve making out with a girl in the office. Steve is speaking with Stark about his shield and the options available. He finds one that he thinks is suitable and looks pretty awesome, and asks Peggy what she thinks.
Yes, I think it works.
It is a beautifully acted scene and communicates a lot of jealous emotion through action. My notes for improvement are the following. Number 1, pacing. My general philosophy on superhero pacing is that even when there is a scene between two people and they're just talking, it should be like a boxing match. Every line of dialogue should be like a punch to the jaw or ribs. Critical. It should be consistent impact that is impossible to turn away from. In this movie, personally, I didn't get that. Number 2, Red Skull. I personally found his portrayal underwhelming. Now, I love Hugo Weaving, and especially as Smith in The Matrix, but the terrifying and threatening presence he held as that character in that movie is missing here. Number 3, the death of Bucky. It is one of the most critical moments in the story, and yet the physicality and timing of how it was pulled off wasn't nearly as emotionally crippling as I needed it to be. I wanted that moment to take my breath away, and it just didn't. And I think a big part of why that is Bucky isn't a well fleshed out character. He gets decent screen time, but in that time I was not able to develop and secure an emotional connection strong enough to feel his death the way I know I was meant to. On the brighter side, with this movie, Marvel meant to build a solid foundation establishing who Captain America is and what he wants, and in that, they succeeded. I give Captain America, the First Avenger, 3 out of 5 stars. We journey now past the Avengers, Iron Man 3, and Thor 2, and arrive at Captain America, the Winter Soldier, a movie I like a lot. The story follows Captain America and Black Widow. When valuable SHIELD files are recovered during a rescue mission, Nick Fury becomes a target for assassination. When he is declared dead, a new enemy surfaces, the Winter Soldier. Upon his arrival, Cap and Widow recruit Sam Wilson to become the Falcon, and together try to get to the bottom of the story. When Cap learns the Winter Soldier is in fact Bucky and that he's not himself, he fights hard to get his best friend back. Bucky fights back under heavy influence from Hydra. But with help from Black Widow, Falcon, and a not-so-dead Nick Fury, Cap does his best to recover Bucky's memory from the wreckage. Following the WTF reaction to Iron Man 3 and the okay, nice try reaction to Thor 2, the Winter Soldier entered our lives and reminded us that Marvel is actually pretty good at making movies. The success of Captain America 2 is largely due to the talent behind the direction and the screenplay. Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, also responsible for the First Avenger, previously penned the Narnia movies. So even before Marvel entered their careers, they were already practiced at writing for a very unique universe and for a very particular set of characters. Joe and Anthony Russo have spent the last several years co-directing and producing Community, a TV show that has many students come together that are very diverse in a community college and basically try to help one another survive classes and socializing, because that's a nightmare. The episodes that got the attention of Kevin Feige were A Fistful of Paintballs and For a Few Paintballs More. There are no paintballs to be found in this movie, but there's really no need for them. The Russos channeled their talent for directing college students at play and upgraded to superheroes at war. The result is an espionage actioner that, in my opinion, offers the strongest villain up to this point in the MCU. A close second is Loki from the Avengers, a man driven by jealousy who tried to take over New York and become ruler. Knowing how these films work, it was pretty obvious he was going to fail, and that's why the Winter Soldier is so refreshing as an antagonist. Bucky is not only the main character's best friend, he's also a brainwashed soldier under the order to kill his best friend. He's not being a delusional, power-hungry, wannabe god. He is a human being under a crushing influence. And that brings attention that most Marvel films, in my opinion, lack. Save for Iron Man 3, Marvel has been consistently predictable in its plotting. So when I watched this for the first time and was unable to subconsciously predict the story beats, it made for a much more likable experience. It also doesn't hurt to have Anthony Mackie and Robert Redford in supporting roles. Both are amazing talents, and alongside the main players, demonstrate their ability to play strong-willed characters. And to match the strong will of our characters, it's only fitting the visuals evoke the will to entertain. With practice, of course, Marvel has developed a reputation for crafting memorable set pieces, and the ones in this film are a pretty terrific example. One sequence that always impresses is the car chase involving Nick Fury. There's little that doesn't work, and the dialogue between Nick Fury and the car voice provided by Robert Clotworthy is quite humorous.
Propulsion systems offline. Reboot, damn it!
The humor in general is more engaging and interesting this time, and I think that's in large part due to the chemistry between Cap and Black Widow and Cap and Sam Wilson. The latter share my favorite scene, the opening. It's a very smart scene because it gives us a good whiff of Wilson's personality. There's also the detail of Steve's to-do list. Admittedly, that insert works better with an audience, but within the context of the scene, it works regardless. My one note for improvement falls under plausibility, or as people nowadays like to say, really, followed of course by 10 question marks, because as we all know, 1 is just totally useless. Basically, upon my rewatch of this movie for this video, I took notice that, save for the final fight, Captain America rarely takes a hit and gets injured. Now, I understand he is a super soldier, but the guy is still human, and it just seems to me like, during this movie, he's only reacting like a human in chosen moments. That's really my only gripe with this movie. I think it is a huge improvement from the First Avenger, and certainly after seeing this movie, I was very glad to hear that the Russos were doing Civil War, and we'll get to that in basically 10 seconds, or 8, depending on how this edits. Anyways, I am giving the Winter Soldier 4.5 out of 5 stars. We now journey past Avengers: Age of Ultron, and arrive at the cap to this trilogy, Captain America: Civil War. To the directors, the writers, the producers, and the cast, thank you very much for this movie. The story follows Captain America and the new Avengers. When their encounter with Crossbones turns ugly and civilian lives are put at risk, Iron Man summons Secretary of State Thaddeus Ross, who informs the team of the Sokovia Accords. They will prevent the Avengers from acting out of impulse and will put a leash on when and where they fight. Tony is game, but Steve is not. The other Avengers pick their sides and try to keep the Winter Soldier at bay, simultaneously adjusting to newcomer Black Panther. It all leads to both sides meeting at the airport for a private boxing match. The Avengers fight the Avengers. For all of you format nerds, I will begin by saying that I was very blessed to see this movie with 3 friends in IMAX 3D. It was a glorious, sold-out crowd, filled with many, many passionate fans, and as punishment for ordering my tickets the night before, I had to sit in the very, very front row, in seat A20 to be exact. As you might imagine, it was torture on my neck, but make no mistake, it was so worth it. I chalk the experience up to the well-oiled machine known as Marvel. 2016 has been a pretty fantastic year for them. Deadpool was phenomenal. I was laughing in every scene. The character was finally given his time in the spotlight, and it was not wasted. With Civil War, Marvel was ambitious and gave themselves a demanding task. Pit Iron Man against Captain America, divide the Avengers, and make it work. It's an amazing feat, and one even I was unsure of. I mean, there are a lot of characters in this movie. 2 of them are new, and 3 of them we have seen in their own standalone projects. The upside is we already know most of these characters. Regardless of the actor, we have seen Spider-Man in 5 big-budget movies, so we basically already know what his personality is like. As for Black Panther, this is the first live-action interpretation of the character. So, not only was casting key, the writers had to communicate the appropriate amount of info that would dabble in his origin without showing the whole A to Z tale. They also had to convince us why his presence was required, because, like I said, there are a lot of superheroes in this movie, and if one person does not belong, it's going to be evident from the start. But as the movie unfolded, what became evident is that I had nothing to worry about, and in the end, both for Spider-Man and Black Panther, their presence was handled with class, and both fit into the storyline. Oh, and when Peter Parker had his first scene, you better believe my audience was clapping. Tom Holland, the new Peter Parker, was cast last year, officially replacing Andrew Garfield in the role. For many fans, myself included, Andrew Garfield worked just fine as the web-slinger, but for a lot of fans, Tobey Maguire still holds a very, very special place in their heart. I've previously seen Holland in The Impossible, opposite Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor. I myself wasn't sure how he would turn out as Peter Parker or as Spider-Man, but he won me over in his first scene. He projects a very refreshing, youthful energy that allows the story to not feel nearly as old as our main character. Wink, wink. The greatest responsibility with this story is trying to get the audience to care about everything going on. And with that in mind, I have to give serious props to Sebastian Stan, Robert Downey Jr., and Chris Evans. They, as a trio, are the characters that drive this story. And because of their investment as actors, we are able to invest our emotions into their actions and not regret it. Robert Downey Jr. in particular has played Iron Man 6 times now, and each time it is so effortless, this performance, and what blows me away is he never allows that effortless nature to fuel laziness. And as a matter of fact, nothing about this movie is lazy. Every performance is genuine. The visual effects are crisp and eye-catching, and the direction is as confident as it is inspiring. And definitely after this movie, I think having the Russo brothers helm the final Avengers film, both Part 1 and Part 2, is a very smart move. I will always be thankful to Joss Whedon for giving us Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron. I have my issues with both films, but the reality is Whedon gave fans a reward for their earnest faith that these characters could come together and fight as one. With the Russos, their vision is not only attractive, but they don't take sides as filmmakers on who is right, Iron Man or Captain America. They let us decide. And to be honest, even though I love Vision among other characters, I am team Captain America. He's got Ant-Man, so that basically sealed the deal. And I loved seeing him in this movie. Some people say size doesn't matter. After seeing this movie, I beg to differ. Size also factors in for scale, and this movie owns its scale. The Russos are directing an entourage of 12 superheroes and all of their explosions, but their passion for the material is so great that it just works. I mean, their passion is evident in literally every scene. My personal favorite scene is really hard to pick. I love many scenes in this movie. So what I will say is that the one scene that surprised me with just how awesome it was the big airport battle between Team Iron Man and Team Captain America. For that sequence, there are a million questions to consider and then answer, because you kind of have to, when writing, shooting, and editing. Like, who says what? Who fights who? How do you not make the whole thing one big clusterfudge? Oh, and also, how do you not blow the budget to smithereens? Well, I don't personally know, but I imagine that having very smart executives behind the scenes is very helpful and a big plus. For Marvel, this movie is a huge +1. Now, I personally don't believe in calling movies perfect or masterpieces, but what I will say is that, in my opinion, this movie is better than Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron. And I think if this movie is to be taken as a sign, then the third Avengers film is going to be the event that we all desperately want it to be. I give Captain America Civil War 5 out of 5 stars. To now wrap this trilogy up in an epilogue of sorts, a big thank you to the filmmakers for not shying away from ambition and for making these movies not just popcorn fare, but experiences. In conversation with my friends, we have talked about these stories and these characters, and with genuine passion. And the reality is, when you can build a discussion based on a fantasy and use that to relate to people, strangers or already made friends, that is cinema doing more than just passing time. And that's pretty great. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Have a very, very, very inspiring day.